Nathan Carter couldn't believe his eyes. The energy readings on his screen made no sense at all. He blinked twice and adjusted his glasses, but the strange patterns remained unchanged on the monitor of the Stellar Horizons science station. "Captain Wright," he called out, his voice slightly shaky. "You need to see this." Captain Lisa Wright was already walking toward his station, her boots making soft sounds against the ship's floor. She had learned long ago that when her chief science officer sounded worried, it usually meant something important. "What have you found, Nathan?" she asked, leaning over his shoulder to look at the screen. "These energy readings, they're impossible," Nathan said, pointing to the shifting patterns. "It's like there's a hole in space where light just disappears. Not like a black hole. This is different. The energy isn't being pulled in, it's just vanishing." Lisa frowned. The Stellar Horizon had been mapping this unexplored sector for 3 weeks now, and this was the first unusual reading they'd found. "How far away is it?" "About 6 hours at our current speed," Nathan replied, typing quickly on his keyboard. "Whatever it is, it's big. Really big." Lisa straightened up and walked back to her captain's chair. She pressed a button on the armrest. "Security Chief Morgan to the bridge." A few minutes later, Peter Morgan walked onto the bridge. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a serious face that rarely smiled. "Captain." "Peter, I need your assessment of something," Lisa said, gesturing toward Nathan's station. As Peter studied the readings, his usual serious expression grew even more intense. "I don't like it," he said finally. "We have no idea what's causing this. It could be dangerous." Lisa nodded. She had expected this response from her security chief. It was his job to be cautious. She looked around her bridge at the crew members working at their stations. Each of them had trained for years for deep space exploration, knowing they might encounter the unknown. Now they were facing exactly that. "Plot a course to investigate," she ordered. "But keep our shields up and weapons on standby. Amy, send a message back to Earth about what we found." Amy Foster, the communications officer, nodded and began typing at her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she prepared the subspace message. As the Stellar Horizon changed course, the crew felt a slight shift under their feet. The ship's engines hummed a bit louder as they increased speed. Through the main view screen, the stars seemed to shift as the massive research vessel turned toward its new destination. For the next 6 hours, tension grew on the bridge. Nathan kept updating them about the energy readings, which got stranger as they got closer. Peter Morgan checked and rechecked the weapon systems, while Amy Foster monitored all frequencies for any kind of transmission. "We're entering visual range," Ryan Cooper announced from the helm. "Putting it on screen now." The main view screen flickered, and everyone on the bridge gasped. Against the backdrop of stars floated what looked like a piece of space itself, a massive shape that seemed to bend light around it. It was huge, at least 3 times the size of the Stellar Horizon, and it appeared to be moving. "That's a ship," Lisa whispered, standing up from her chair. "An alien vessel." As if responding to her words, the strange ship suddenly began to change. Parts of it that had been invisible became slightly more solid, revealing geometric patterns and structures that were clearly artificial. It was beautiful in a strange, unsettling way. "Captain," Amy called out, her voice excited. "We're receiving a transmission." "Put it through," Lisa ordered, straightening her uniform. The bridge speakers came to life with a series of complex sounds, not quite music, not quite language, but something in between. After a few seconds, the sounds began to form into words, as if the alien's translation system was learning English in real time. "Greetings, light-dwelling vessel," a deep melodious voice said. "We are the Shadow Warriors. We mean you no harm." Lisa took a deep breath. This was the moment every space explorer dreamed of. First contact with an alien species. "This is Captain Lisa Wright of the Earth research vessel Stellar Horizon. We welcome peaceful contact. Your response brings us hope. the voice replied. "We have traveled far, seeking beings who might understand. Your species lives in both light and shadow. This makes you unique in our experience." Nathan was practically bouncing with excitement at his science station as he analyzed the alien vessel. "Captain, their ship, it's not just bending light, it's actually manipulating dark matter in ways we've only theorized about." "We would speak with you further," the Shadow Warrior voice continued. "Our situation is urgent. Would you permit a small delegation to board your vessel? We can adapt our forms to be visible to your eyes." Lisa looked at Peter, who shook his head slightly, still cautious. But she had already made her decision. "We would be honored," she replied. "Please allow us to prepare a suitable meeting room." The next hour was a flurry of activity. The ship's largest conference room was prepared, security teams were positioned discreetly, and the senior staff gathered to meet their visitors. Nathan had brought every scanning device he could carry, while Amy had the ship's best translation systems ready. When the Shadow Warriors finally appeared in the designated transport area, everyone held their breath. 3 figures materialized, or perhaps condensed was a better word. They seemed to form out of the darkness itself, taking on humanoid shapes that stood about 7 feet tall. Their bodies were dark gray with patterns of deeper black swirling across their surface, like living shadows. They had no faces as humans would recognize them, but they had areas that swirled more actively where eyes might be. "We thank you for your trust," the middle figure said, its voice the same one they had heard earlier. "I am Elder Shade, and these are my advisors, Deep and Twilight. Welcome aboard the Stellar Horizon." Lisa replied, managing to keep her voice steadied despite her amazement. "I'm Captain Wright, and this is my senior staff." As she introduced each crew member, Lisa could see Nathan trying to discreetly scan the aliens with his devices. The Shadow Warriors seemed to notice this but showed no objection. In fact, the one called Twilight moved closer to Nathan, allowing him a better reading. "Your curiosity is refreshing," Twilight said, its voice lighter than Elder Shade's. "Many species fear what they do not understand. They fear the dark." "Darkness is just the absence of light," Nathan replied excitedly. "It's as natural as light itself. The way you manipulate it, though, that's incredible." "This understanding," Elder Shade said, turning to face Lisa, "this acceptance of both light and shadow, it is why we must ask for your help. Our people face extinction from those who worship light alone. The luminary come, and they bring with them a terrible choice: convert to their way of existence or be destroyed." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Lisa looked at her crew members' faces, seeing her own concern reflected there. They had come looking for scientific discoveries, but had found themselves in the middle of what sounded like an interstellar conflict. "Tell us more," Lisa said, gesturing toward the conference table. "Tell us everything." As they all took their seats, the Shadow Warriors somehow settling into the chairs despite their seemingly insubstantial forms, Lisa knew that this moment would change human history forever. Their mission of exploration had just become something much more important: a chance to prevent a war and save a species. The stars outside the ship's windows seemed to shine a bit differently now, as if reminding everyone that the universe was full of both light and darkness, and perhaps humanity's greatest strength was their ability to live in both. Amy Foster sat in the ship's conference room, surrounded by unusual technology. Several devices blinked with soft lights as they helped translate the Shadow Warriors' complex language patterns. She watched in fascination as Elder Shade's form rippled while speaking, creating patterns that her translation system converted into words. "Our history stretches back many thousand years," Elder Shade explained, its dark form shifting like smoke in still air. "We lived peacefully in the spaces between stars, studying the mysteries of dark matter and cosmic shadows." The holographic display in the center of the conference table showed images of the Shadow Warriors' home systems, vast regions of space where dark matter gathered in unusual ways. Amy noticed how Captain Wright leaned forward, completely focused on every word. Then the luminary found us. Elder Shade continued. The hologram changed to show bright, crystalline ships that seemed to be made of pure light. They believed that darkness was evil, that it needed to be cleansed from the universe. They could not accept that balance was necessary. Nathan Carter, who had been quietly taking readings, looked up from his instruments. But that's nonsense. Even basic physics shows that darkness is just the absence of light. You can't have one without the other. Deep, one of the Shadow Warrior advisors, turned toward Nathan. Your species understands this truth because you live in both realms. You embrace the day and rest in the night. The luminary have forgotten this wisdom. Amy's translation system beeped, indicating it had detected something important in Deep's voice patterns. Captain, she said, I'm picking up strong emotional markers in their communications when they speak about their lost colonies. Lisa Wright nodded and turned back to Elder Shade. How many colonies have you lost? 7. Elder Shade replied, its form darkening with what seemed to be grief. 7 worlds where our people had built their homes. The luminary came with their light ships and their energy weapons. They demanded we convert, that we become beings of pure light like them. When we refused, the hologram showed a planet surrounded by the crystalline ships. Beams of intense light shot from the vessels, and wherever they touched, the shadow matter that the Shadow Warriors used for their cities and technology simply disappeared. Those who could not escape in time were destroyed. Twilight added softly, we are all that remain of our people. This fleet carries the last 50,000 Shadow Warriors in existence. Peter Morgan, who had been standing quietly by the door, finally spoke up. And now they're chasing you. How close are they? Too close, Elder Shade answered. Their fleet will reach this sector within 30 days. We came here hoping to find a safe place to hide. But the Elder's form rippled with what seemed like hesitation. But what? Lisa asked, though Amy suspected she already knew the answer. But we discovered that Earth lies directly in their path, Elder Shade said. The luminary will not ignore your world. They will see your use of darkness, your night cities, your shadow technologies, your very way of life, as an affront to their beliefs. The room fell silent. Amy watched as her fellow crew members processed this information. Captain Wright's face showed deep concern, but also determination. Show us everything you know about their fleet, Lisa said firmly. Their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses, if they exist. The next few hours were filled with detailed discussions of luminary technology. The Shadow Warriors explained how the light beings had turned the very essence of light into a weapon. Their ships could focus beams of energy so intense they could vaporize shadow matter instantly. Ryan Cooper, who had joined them from engineering, asked detailed questions about the Shadow Warriors' defensive systems. Your ability to bend light around your ships, could that be modified to reflect their weapons back at them? We tried, Deep responded, but their energy levels are too high. Our systems overload before we can redirect their attacks. Amy noticed something interesting in the way the Shadow Warriors described the luminary attacks. Captain, she said, I'm analyzing their descriptions of previous battles. There's a pattern to how the luminary fight. They always attack from the same direction, the direction of the nearest star. Nathan's eyes lit up. Of course. They're using the star's natural light to amplify their weapons. That's why they're so powerful. Lisa stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Then we need to find a way to use that against them. Ryan, work with Deep on understanding their defensive technology. Nathan, I want you to study everything we know about manipulating light. Amy, keep analyzing those battle records. Any pattern could be important. Captain. Peter interrupted. We should contact Earth immediately. They need to know what's coming. Agreed, Lisa said. Amy, prepare a detailed message for Earth Command. Include everything we've learned about both species and their technology. As Amy began composing the message, she noticed Elder Shade watching her with what seemed like curiosity. "Your species fascinates us," the elder said. "You invented writing to capture words in darkness, yet you also created light to push back the night. You fear the dark, yet you also find peace in it. You are truly beings of both realms." "Maybe that's why we found each other," Amy suggested, looking up from her work. "Maybe we're meant to help find a solution." The Shadow Warrior's form rippled in what Amy's systems translated as agreement. "Perhaps. But the Luminary are powerful, and they believe absolutely in their cause. They have destroyed every species that refused to embrace their way of life." "Then they haven't met humans yet," Lisa said firmly. "We're pretty stubborn when someone tells us what we can and can't do." "Ryan, how long would it take to modify our shields with Shadow Warrior technology?" "With their help, maybe 2 weeks," Ryan answered, already making calculations on his tablet. "But we'd need to test it thoroughly." "You have 2 days," Lisa told him. "The stellar horizon needs to be ready to defend Earth if necessary. Peter, start working on combat strategies. Nathan, focus on finding weaknesses in their light-based weapons. We need options." As the meeting broke up and people headed to their stations, Amy finished coding her message to Earth. She looked at the Shadow Warriors, who were discussing technical details with Ryan and Nathan. Despite their alien appearance, she could sense their worry and their hope. The stellar horizon hummed quietly around them as its crew began preparing for what might be humanity's greatest challenge. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance of light and shadow, unaware that the balance they represented was about to be threatened by those who refused to accept its necessity. Amy sent the message to Earth and whispered quietly to herself, "Let's hope we're ready when they come." Ryan Cooper hadn't slept in 36 hours, but he didn't care. The engineering lab of the stellar horizon had become his second home as he worked with the Shadow Warriors to combine their technologies. Empty coffee cups littered his workstation, and his tablet was filled with new designs and calculations. "Try it now," he said to Deep, who hovered near a test chamber they had built. Inside, a small shield generator hummed quietly. Deep extended a tendril of shadow matter toward the controls. "Energy level stable. Beginning test number 47. They had failed 46 times already, but Ryan refused to give up. This time, they had added something new, a way to switch rapidly between light and shadow states, rather than trying to defend against light directly. A bright beam shot across the test chamber, aimed at a small target protected by their experimental shield. Previous tests had ended with the shield overloading instantly, but this time, something different happened. The shield flickered between light and darkness so quickly it looked like a strobing effect. The test beam hit it and scattered. It worked. Ryan shouted, jumping up from his chair. "Deep, are you seeing these readings?" "Fascinating," Deep replied, its shadow form rippling with excitement. "The rapid switching prevents the light weapon from fully forming its disruption effect. Simple, yet brilliant." Ryan was already reaching for his communicator. "Cooper to bridge. Captain, you need to see this." 10 minutes later, Captain Wright stood in the lab with Jennifer Hayes, their strategic officer, watching as Ryan and Deep demonstrated their breakthrough. "The key was accepting that we couldn't block their weapons completely," Ryan explained, pointing to the shield generator. "Instead, we switch between light and shadow states 1,000 times per second. Their weapons can't maintain a lock on either state long enough to do damage." Lisa nodded slowly. "Can we scale this up to protect the whole ship?" "Better than that," Ryan said, grinning. "We can modify it to work on our weapons too. Imagine photon torpedoes that flicker between light and shadow. They'd be almost impossible to defend against." "Get it done," Lisa ordered. "How long?" "With the Shadow Warriors' help, we can have the stellar horizon upgraded in 3 days. Their engineers are incredibly efficient." Jennifer spoke up, her tactical mind already working. "Captain, if we can protect one ship, we can protect a fleet. Earth's defense forces would stand a real chance against the Luminary." "Agreed." Amy's latest analysis of their battle tactics shows they're predictable. They always attack in rigid formations, always from the direction of the nearest star. They've never had to adapt their strategies because no one has survived long enough to force them to. Just then, Nathan Carter burst into the lab, out of breath. "Captain, you need to see this." He held up his tablet, showing a complex series of energy readings. "I've been studying the luminaries' weapon signatures from the Shadow Warriors' data. There's something strange about their energy pattern." Everyone gathered around as Nathan explained. "Look here, their weapons aren't just light-based. They're using some kind of quantum resonance to disrupt shadow matter. But that means they're actually using darkness themselves, deep finished, its form shifting rapidly in what seemed like surprise. They cannot truly eliminate shadow from their technology, even though they claim to despise it." "Exactly," Nathan said. "Their whole ideology is based on a lie. They need darkness to make their light weapons work. Without the quantum shadow effect, their beams would just be ordinary light." Lisa's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Could we use this information?" "Maybe," Nathan replied. "If we could find a way to show them that their own technology depends on darkness." "It wouldn't matter," Jennifer interrupted. "Religious zealots don't change their minds just because you show them facts. We need to focus on defending Earth." The captain was quiet for a moment, considering their options. Finally, she said, "We'll do both. Ryan, continue the shield modifications. Nathan, keep studying their weapons. Any weakness could be crucial. Jennifer, I want you to work with the Shadow Warriors on battle strategies. They know how the Luminary think." "What about Earth's response?" Jennifer asked. "I just received word from Command," Lisa said. "They're mobilizing every ship they can. The Shadow Warriors' fleet will be given safe harbor in the outer solar system, hidden in the shadow of Jupiter. Earth's taking this threat seriously." Deep moved closer to the humans. "Your people trust us so quickly." Lisa smiled slightly. "Let's just say Earth has some experience with refugees fleeing from those who want to destroy them. We've learned it's better to help than to turn away." The next few days were a blur of activity. The Stellar Horizons engineering teams worked around the clock with the Shadow Warriors, installing the new hybrid shield technology. The weapon systems were modified to incorporate shadow matter principles, creating entirely new types of armaments that existed in both light and darkness. Jennifer spent hours with the Shadow Warriors' military leaders, learning their experience fighting the Luminary and combining it with human tactical doctrine. Together, they developed new strategies that took advantage of the hybrid technology. "The key," she explained during a strategy session, "is to break their formation. They've never faced an enemy that could match their power, so they've become overconfident. If we can force them to adapt, they'll be fighting in a way they've never had to before." Amy Foster's voice came over the ship's comm system. "Captain, we're receiving new long-range sensor data. The Luminary fleet has changed course. They're moving faster than expected. New estimated arrival, 16 days. Lisa looked around at her crew and their Shadow Warrior allies. "Then we have 16 days to prepare a surprise they'll never forget." "Ryan, how many ships can we upgrade with the new technology in that time?" "With the Shadow Warriors' help, maybe 30 or 40. Their engineers are already helping Earth's shipyards modify our defensive systems. It will have to be enough," Lisa said firmly. "Humanity isn't about to let another species be wiped out by zealots who can't accept differences. Not while we can do something about it." Deep's form rippled in what the humans had learned was their equivalent of gratitude. "You risk much to help us." "That's what humans do," Ryan said, looking up from his work. "We see someone in trouble, we help, especially when the bullies are trying to force everyone to be just like them." As the humans and Shadow Warriors continued their work, the stars outside seemed to shine a bit brighter. In 16 days, those stars would witness something unprecedented. A battle between beings of pure light and an alliance of humans and shadow dwellers. The fate of Earth, the Shadow Warriors, and perhaps the very balance of the universe would depend on their success. Jennifer looked at the tactical display, showing the approaching luminary fleet. "We'll be ready," she said quietly. "Light isn't the only force in the universe that matters. Sometimes, the shadows have to remind the light that it can't exist alone." The alarm sirens on the stellar horizon screamed to life. Red warning lights flashed through every corridor as crew members ran to their battle stations. In the ship's command center, Captain Lisa Wright stood watching the main screen with stern eyes. Multiple light signatures detected at the edge of the solar system. Amy Foster announced from her station, "It's them. The luminary fleet has arrived." The screen showed hundreds of crystalline ships emerging from light speed. They gleamed like diamonds in the starlight, beautiful but deadly. At their center was a massive vessel that seemed to be made of pure sunlight. "That's their command ship," Elder Shade said, its shadowy form floating near Lisa's captain's chair. "Their leader, the Light Commander, is aboard." Peter Morgan checked his tactical display. "Our fleet is in position, Captain. 35 Earth ships equipped with the new Shadow technology, plus the Shadow Warrior vessels, all hidden in Jupiter's shadow as planned." Lisa took a deep breath. "Send the greeting message we prepared." Amy's fingers moved across her console. Moments later, a response came through. The bridge speakers carried a voice that sounded like crystal wind chimes, beautiful but cold. "This is Light Commander Solaris of the Luminary Fleet," the voice announced. "We know you harbor the shadow parasites. Surrender them to us, or your world will face purification." "This is Captain Lisa Wright of Earth," Lisa replied firmly. "We've reviewed your demands and reject them completely. The Shadow Warriors are under our protection. You choose darkness over light." The commander's voice held disgust. "Then you will share their fate. All ships, attack formation. Cleans this system of shadow." The luminary ships moved forward in perfect lines, their formation as rigid as their beliefs. Light began to gather around their weapons ports, building to blinding intensity. "Now," Lisa ordered. From behind Jupiter's vast bulk, the combined human and Shadow Warrior fleet emerged. The stellar horizon led the charge, its new hybrid shields flickering between light and shadow states. The luminary's first wave of light beams struck the shields and scattered harmlessly into space. "They're surprised," Jennifer Hayes said from her tactical station. "Their formation is hesitating." "Launch shadow light torpedoes," Lisa commanded. "Break up their lines." The human ships released their new weapons, projectiles that flickered between states just like their shields. The luminary's defenses, designed to block either light or shadow attacks, couldn't cope with weapons that were both at once. Explosions bloomed across their front line. "Their formation is breaking," Peter called out. "They're trying to regroup around their command ship." Nathan Carter, who had been monitoring the enemy's energy signatures, suddenly straightened in his chair. "Captain, their weapons, they're increasing power to dangerous levels. They're drawing energy directly from the sun." The luminary command ship began to glow with impossible brightness. Beams of concentrated sunlight shot out, much stronger than before. When they hit the hybrid shields, the defending ships shuddered. "Shields holding at 60%, Ryan Cooper reported from engineering. "But we can't take many hits like that." Lisa turned to Elder Shade. "Can your ships get closer to their command vessel? We need to disrupt their connection to the sun." The Shadow Warrior's form rippled with determination. "We will try. Our vessels can move through the darkness between their ships." The Shadow Warrior fleet began a daring maneuver, their ships seeming to fade in and out of existence as they slipped through the gaps in the luminary formation. The enemy ships tried to target them, but it was like trying to shoot at smoke. "Enemy ships are breaking formation to chase the Shadow Warriors," Jennifer reported. "Their rigid battle line is falling apart." "That's what we wanted," Lisa said with a grim smile. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta. Target their isolated ships." The human fleet moved in, their hybrid weapons striking the luminary vessels that had broken formation. Without their perfect lines of support, the light ships proved vulnerable to the combined attacks. But the luminary command ship was still a terrible threat. Its weapons were growing even stronger, drawing more and more power from the sun. "Captain," Nathan shouted, "I'm detecting a dangerous power buildup in their main weapon. The quantum shadow effect in their technology. It's becoming unstable. They're pushing it too far." Lisa's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. They're so desperate to win. They're ignoring the very principles that make their weapons work. "Open a channel to their commander." "Channel open," Amy reported. "Commander Solaris, you must power down your main weapon immediately," Lisa called out. "The shadow quantum effect in your technology is destabilizing. You'll destroy your own ship." "Lies," the crystalline voice rang back. "We have eliminated all darkness from our being. We are pure light." "Science doesn't care what you believe," Lisa responded. "Look at your own readings. The darkness you deny is part of your own weapons. Without it, they wouldn't work at all. You need shadow just as much as you need light." There was a moment of silence. Then Nathan called out, "Captain, their power readings are still climbing. They're not going to stop. All ships, fall back." Lisa ordered, "Get clear of their command ship." The combined fleet retreated as the luminary command ship began to pulse with blinding light. Cracks appeared in its crystalline surface, dark lines spreading across its structure. "Their ship is breaking apart," Nathan reported. "The shadow quantum effect is cascading out of control." "Emergency transport," Lisa commanded. "Get as many of them off that ship as we can." Human and shadow warrior ships moved in, their emergency transport systems locking onto life signs aboard the failing command ship. They managed to beam away hundreds of luminary crew members before their ship finally exploded in a burst of light and shadow, the forces they had tried to keep separate finally tearing their vessel apart. As the explosion faded, the remaining luminary ships stopped firing. Their perfect formation was in ruins, and their commander was gone. "We're receiving a transmission," Amy announced. "It's from their secondary command ship." "Put it through," Lisa ordered. A new voice, less certain than Commander Solaris had been, spoke. "This is Sub-Commander Aurelia. We request a ceasefire." Lisa looked at Elder Shade, who nodded slowly. "Ceasefire granted," Lisa replied. "Would you like to discuss the true nature of light and shadow?" The battle was over. Around them, rescue ships were picking up escape pods from both sides. The stellar horizon's sensors showed an unusual sight: beams of light being helped by creatures of shadow, working together to save lives. "Send word to Earth," Lisa told Amy. "Tell them the immediate threat is over, but we have a lot of work ahead of us. These two species need to learn to coexist." "Do you think they can?" Peter asked quietly. Lisa watched as a shadow warrior ship guided a damaged luminary vessel to safety. "They'll have to. The universe needs both light and shadow. Today proved that trying to have one without the other only leads to destruction." The stars twinkled in the distance, their light and the darkness between them existing in perfect balance, just as it always had. 3 days after the battle, the stellar horizon's conference room was filled with an unusual sight. Beams of pure light sat across the table from creatures of living shadow, while humans occupied the space between them. Captain Lisa Wright couldn't help but appreciate the symbolism. "The terms are simple," Lisa said, looking at both delegations. "Earth will provide a neutral space for both species to rebuild their relationship. We'll help establish joint colonies where both shadow and light zones can exist together." Sub-Commander Aurelia, now leading the luminary, glowed softly as she spoke. Her voice still sounded like crystal chimes, but it had lost its former harshness. "Many of our people are struggling with these changes. For generations, we believed that light must eliminate darkness. And now you've seen that belief nearly destroyed you." Elder Shade responded, its shadowy form rippling gently. "Just as we once believed we could exist only in darkness. Both our species were wrong." Nathan Carter, who had been studying data from the battle, stepped forward with his tablet. "If I may," he said, displaying a complex diagram. This shows how the quantum shadow effect works in your light weapons. It proves that both forces are necessary. Light and shadow aren't enemies. They're partners in the basic fabric of space. Amy Foster, who had been helping translate the complex discussions between the species, noticed something interesting. The way both your languages describe space is similar, she said. You both see it as a dance between light and shadow. You just focused on different parts of the dance. Ryan Cooper nodded from his seat. That's what made our hybrid technology work. We didn't try to choose between light and shadow. We used both together. That's why it was so effective. Jennifer Hayes pulled up a star chart on the main screen. We've identified several systems that would be perfect for joint colonies, she said. Each has planets that naturally cycle between light and shadow phases. Both species could live there comfortably. And Earth? Aurelia asked. Your world still follows its ancient pattern of day and night. How do you manage this constant change? Lisa smiled. We adapted. We learned to love both the sunrise and the sunset, the noon and the midnight. Our cities light up the darkness when we need to see, but we also cherish the quiet of night. Balance isn't about eliminating differences. It's about finding ways to make them work together. Peter Morgan, who had been quietly watching the proceedings, spoke up. Our defensive fleet will help protect these joint colonies. No one will be allowed to disturb your peace while you learn to coexist. Elder Shade's form shifted in what humans now recognize as their version of a nod. Your species is young compared to ours, yet you understand things that took us millennia to learn. Perhaps that is why you were meant to find us. Speaking of finding things, Nathan said excitedly, I've been studying the combined light-shadow technology we developed. The applications are amazing. We could use it for everything from space exploration to medical treatment. If both your species are willing to share your knowledge, we could make discoveries that benefit everyone. Lisa watched as Luminary and Shadow Warriors began discussing possibilities with Nathan. The former enemies were already finding common ground in scientific curiosity. It was a good sign. We should establish a joint scientific council, Aurelia suggested, her light pulsing with interest. Share our knowledge, conduct research together. Perhaps we can discover things that neither of our species could find alone. The humans must be part of this council, Elder Shade added. Their unique perspective sees connections we miss. Amy's translation system was working hard to keep up as the discussion grew more animated. Ideas were flowing freely now. Plans for joint missions, shared technologies, cultural exchanges. The fear and hatred that had divided these species for so long was beginning to fade in the face of possibility. There's something else we should discuss, Lisa said, drawing everyone's attention. During the battle, we saw that both your species were capable of adapting quickly when you had to. The Luminary broke from their rigid formations, while the Shadow Warriors learned to work in direct light. You're not as fixed in your ways as you thought. Change is difficult, Aurelia admitted, her glow dimming slightly. Some of our people still resist these new ideas. They cling to the old beliefs. As do some of ours, Elder Shade agreed. But we have something now that we didn't have before, proof that another way is possible, and humans to help guide us toward it. Lisa stood up and walked to the window. The stars shone brightly against the darkness of space, creating the eternal dance that both species had viewed so differently for so long. Earth will honor its commitments, she said firmly. We'll help establish the joint colonies, protect them while they grow, and share what we know about living with both light and shadow. In return, we ask only that you remember this lesson. Strength comes from embracing differences, not destroying them. The meeting continued for several more hours as they worked out the details of their new alliance. When it was done, Lisa watched as the Luminary and Shadow Warrior representatives left together, talking animatedly about their plans. Do you think it will last? Peter asked quietly. Look at them, Lisa replied, gesturing to where a young Luminary was demonstrating something to a Shadow Warrior. Their light and darkness mixing without harm. They're already starting to see each other as people instead of enemies. That's how change begins. The stellar horizon would remain in orbit for several more weeks, helping coordinate the establishment of the first joint colony. Earth's other ships were already escorting former refugee vessels back to their homes, now protected by the new alliance. As Lisa looked out at the stars one last time before heading to her quarters, she smiled. Humanity had done more than prevent a war. They had helped two ancient species remember a truth they had forgotten, that the universe was built on balance, and that light and shadow were never meant to fight. In the space outside her window, a shadow warrior ship and a luminary vessel flew past in formation, their combined light and darkness creating a beautiful pattern against the stars. It was, Lisa thought, a perfect symbol of the change they had helped create, and a promise of greater things to come.